Hey everyone, welcome back. This is the first video in my new build series for my hybrid DML panel speakers. Today I'm going to be discussing the overall design and a few considerations that have gone into this and why I'm building it the way I am. But first of all, I guess the obvious question is, what do I mean by hybrid and why am I doing it? So, a few months ago, I did create a pair of acrylic freestanding DML speakers, and they sounded amazing, except that they just lacked punch and didn't really have any low end. So those of you who've built DML speakers before will know exactly what I'm talking about there. Normally I would have just paired it with a subwoofer. In fact, that was my original intention. But then I moved house. The new room that I have to play with doesn't really have any good spot for a subwoofer. So I went back to the drawing board and decided I wanted to keep the sort of DML magic in the mid-range, but I just needed something else that was integrated into the speaker to fill in that low end essentially. So what I've come up with is a hybrid approach which uses a 10-inch woofer to handle the lower frequencies and then a DML panel to handle the upper frequencies, or the mid-range to high frequencies. So that's what I'm talking about today. So the first obvious challenge is how to integrate the woofer with the panel. So what I've done is gone for a sealed enclosure for the woofers. Now from the manufacturer's specs, I got the optimum internal volume figure, and then I went onto a website called, I think it was Subbox Pro. I'll put a link to that. But you can put in the target volume and then play with two of the dimensions and it gives you the third dimension basically. So I knew I had to have a specific width, and I played around with the length because I also want this to provide a good layback angle for the whole speaker. That'll make more sense in a second. But essentially got the plans off the website, took off to my friend Rob's house, who knows more about woodworking than I do. So thanks mate. And we knocked these up over the weekend. I've just sanded all these back so they're all looking good. Obviously the driver goes in the front there, and in the side this is going to be where the speaker wire comes in. I am reusing my previous frames just to save a bit of money, and this did originally have a large panel. As you can see, this is about 108 centimeters long. For the new speakers, because I'm using the woofer to fill in that low end, I'm not really chasing a lot of bass out of the panel. In fact, I'll be crossing it over, so I don't need such a big panel. And now the solution I've come up with putting these together is that I've made the width of the box so that it actually fits inside the frame. Something like that. Now, as I said, this actually gives a nice sort of layback angle on the panel. It's nice and compact, and you know, I think it's going to look great when it's all put together. Now, as for the panel itself, it's going to look something like this. Not sure how well you can see that. It's 600 by 400 mils. As I said, smaller is okay in this instance. I will be doing a whole video about the panel. There's a few interesting things there, and the initial testing that I've done is really promising. So if you're interested in that, please please subscribe, check out the next video. All the info will be in there. Now I'll just stick this on so you can see. Okay, it's starting to take shape. So woofer, panel, and then a spacer at the top, which I know looks kind of weird right now. It's there because I selected a very specific size of panel that wasn't quite long enough to fill out the frame. The reasons for the panel choice will be obvious later, but in the meantime, I'm going to cover this in speaker cloth, and then I've got another frame which will also be covered in speaker cloth, and that's going to hide the woofer. So that will go on something like that. Now obviously the panel is just stuck directly to the frame now, but the spacers will bring that out so that it all sits flush along the front. Yeah, how good does it look? Yeah, not great. I know it kind of looks like a weird assortment of wood, etc., but I'm seeing potential. That's the main thing. So the last piece in this puzzle is the crossover. Now, against the advice of several YouTube commenters, I've decided to build a passive crossover. Never done that before. Everyone says it's really hard and, you know, a black art and all that. So I thought, why not? It'll be fun. Hopefully I'll learn something. And if it actually works, it should sound great. One thing I need to keep in mind is that there might be a bit of tinkering involved along the way. So to that end, I'm going to build the crossover externally. So I've just got a couple of little craft boxes, sort of plywood boxes like this, which I'll just paint, and then I can build the crossovers inside. Everything's just going to have banana plugs and that kind of connection, so when I need to make adjustments or swap out parts and things like that, I can just unplug this, take it away, make the changes and drop it back in. Originally I was going to stick it behind the panel like this on top of the box, but I think even though it's quite small, having anything directly behind the panel is not a good idea, because you will get reflections that just come straight back at the panel and potentially cause, you know, dips and spikes in the frequency response and that kind of thing. Oh, you know what? I'm going to throw the woofer in there just so we can see what it's like, just for fun. Yeah, how good? And then the missing piece of the puzzle, subwoofer input right there. So a nice thing about this design is that it's actually really modular. Not that there's too much to it, but if I want to remove the panel and try a different material, say, I can always just unscrew the panel, unplug the wiring and swap a new one in. Likewise with the enclosure, the woofer, that's just going to be screwed into the surrounding frame, so that can just come straight out. For example, if I want to try open baffle or something, don't know if I would, but the option's always there. And then obviously an external crossover makes that easy as well. Pretty much decided that I'm just going to be able to use a single exciter on this panel. Obviously the woofer's doing all the heavy lifting in the low end where all the energy is, so I don't need too much power. Having said that, I think I'll probably go for a 40-watt exciter, which should be plenty to drive this smaller panel. And just on the panel, it's not only smaller in the X and Y dimensions, but it's also thinner as well. So my previous panels were 4.5 mil thick, and that led to a pretty heavy sheet of acrylic. The new ones are down to 3 mil thick, which obviously is going to be more flexible, but the trade-off is that they're really lightweight. So the driver or exciter can control the lighter panel a lot better and more easily than it can the heavy panel. So I won't have to run it as hard, so there should be less distortion, and it should be more accurate because that panel is going to start and stop, you know, a lot quicker. I haven't done too much in-depth testing, but I have done a little preliminary testing with the lighter panel, and the results are really encouraging, especially when looking at the decay or waterfall charts. You can see that this actually behaves a lot nicer than the heavy panel. And then lastly, it has to look nice. So obviously I'm going to be spending a fair bit of time figuring out the finish and the fabrics and the panel and all that kind of stuff. Thinking of going with a slightly tropical kind of vibe, but I don't know, what do you think? Other than that, this is a pretty accurate mock-up. So this is basically what I'm going to be building over the next month or two. If you're interested in this or you want to see how it goes, please hit the subscribe button, join me and check it out. Since I've been making these videos, I've been getting so much great feedback and comments from people asking me questions and people teaching me stuff as well. Love all of it. Please keep it up. Yeah, really interested to see what you all think. Thanks.